Hello? Okay. Namaskar and good afternoon, everyone. I would first like to thank everyone who made this opportunity possible. First, I would like to thank Professor Sethi and Dr. Nayak for inviting me to speak at this wonderful seminar that so many people have put effort into organizing this year. I would also like to thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor, distinguished panel, and all the ladies and gentlemen who have come to support this wonderful effort today. With that, I would like to start my presentation, which I have prepared to educate everyone about sustainable development. Before I get into some of my research, I would like to share a quote with you. Environment is no one's property to destroy. It is our responsibility to protect. And this is a quote by Mohit Agadi. And this quote is very important to me because it tells us that environment is no one's property to destroy, but is ours to protect. So what does that mean? Every day we are in contact with nature, whether that be the trees in your backyard, the oceans of Odisha, or the animals that flourish in this ecosystem. Every day we are surrounded by nature, and that is why it is our responsibility to protect. And I would also like to introduce myself before we start. My name is Paarth Nayak. I'm from Dallas, Texas in the US. I am about to enter the 12th year of my high school career, and I have recently founded a nonprofit organization called Education for Earth, which is also why I am here today, to educate everyone and create awareness about climate change and sustainability. I can speak Odia, and I can also understand Hindi, so if at any point you feel that I'm talking too fast in English, or if there's any sort of language barrier, please do not hesitate to stop me and allow me to explain more, or maybe explain in Odia as well. I can do however you all please. So as for today's agenda, we are going to cover various topics, but we are going to specifically cover sustainable development. Within sustainable development, I have personally done some research in 2 different countries. One is French Polynesia, and the other is here in India. First, I will cover aquatic development, which is a branch of sustainable development that I have been researching in French Polynesia. I'll just, no problem. Okay, so next slide please. Okay, so what exactly is sustainable development? Sustainable development is the economic development, conducting economic development without the depletion of natural resources. And so there are many purposes and many reasons as to why we partake in sustainable development. One of which includes limiting or eliminating carbon emissions. Another may include promoting the recycling and reusing of resources. One of the examples of that would be India's very own recycling program, in which you may recycle papers, you may recycle plastics, in order to promote the reusing of resources. Another example could be allocating resources towards indigenous individuals. So this means allocating natural resources towards those lands who belong to them. So what does this mean? There was a recent example in the US, and in the early 20th century, Native Americans or indigenous individuals from the US had their land taken away from them from the government. But recently there has been new legislation that has been passed to give these lands back to these Native Americans. And that is what is called allocating resources towards indigenous individuals. And I want all of you to think about something as we talk about sustainable development. Have we come up with a perfect example of sustainable development yet? And I don't want you to answer it now, but maybe at the end of the seminar, you can kind of discuss and think about, have we really come up with an example of sustainable development yet? With that, I want to give you a clear and concise example of what sustainable development is. And the greatest example that comes to mind is forms of renewable energy. Renewable energy is simply types of energy that do not deplete natural resources as fast as non-renewable energy, such as coal, oil, and natural gas. These are two pictures I have taken in French Polynesia and in Mundra, Gujarat. And these are solar panels across the areas in which they're simply using the sun to use the sun's energy to convert into energy and electricity to be used. So let's talk about what the importance of renewable energy is. Previous slide, please. So as per the United Nations, life cycle carbon emissions are only 25 to 32 grams per kilowatt hour for solar panels, whereas a coal-fired power plant might emit 200 grams per kilowatt hour, and a gas-fired power plant would emit nearly 400 grams per kilowatt hour. And so the problem that comes with non-renewable energy sources are that they are going to be exhausted soon. Scientists predict that within the next 50 years, or even by 2050, our oil resources will be exhausted, and we may potentially run out of oil. Whether that be in the next 50 years, whether that be by 2050, it is our goal to take action and to promote renewable energy resources like solar power. Solar power, for instance, all you need for solar power is the sun. And we're going to have the sun for a long time. And to protect future generations, all we simply need is the sun for solar power. Next slide. So now that you have a clear example of sustainable development, solar panels, let's talk about unsustainable development. So unsustainable development would be the opposite. Economic development that hinders the state of the natural environment and makes it extremely difficult for future generations to be healthy in the public world. The first example that comes to mind is mining and drilling. Mining is a very exponentially growing activity that happens in the world, and that is because we draw resources from coal, oil, and natural gas. And as for drilling, drilling is something that actually personally impacted people where I live. A few years ago, there was a lot of drilling that was happening in my city where I'm from, Irving, Texas. And what was happening was that the drilling kept causing constant earthquakes. And these weren't massive earthquakes like maybe in Japan or maybe in California. But these were earthquakes that were frequent, and they were about 2.7 to 3.5 magnitude, and they were happening quite regularly. And so as a simple 8-year-old, I couldn't help but wonder, how does this not only impact me, but the world around me? When we drill, when we mine, we are destroying natural habitats. We are deforesting our trees. We are destroying the natural habitat of birds, insects, and animals. And we are also leading to land pollution, air pollution, water pollution. And so that really just proves how much of an impact unsustainable development can have in the world. Furthermore, another example would be plastic production. Most plastics that we use are designed for single use, whether that be a plastic water bottle, a plastic bag you may get from the local market, or simply a plastic bag. These are all designed for single use because plastics contain toxic chemicals. And the main problem with plastic production is that plastics take hundreds of years to recycle. They actually degenerate into smaller pieces called microplastics. And these microplastics are slowly and very slowly making their way into oceans, making their way into land, making their way into soil and animals. That's why we have to promote sustainable development versus unsustainable development. So as I previously mentioned, I went to French Polynesia. This March of 2022, I traveled to a beautiful series of islands called French Polynesia. French Polynesia is in the Pacific Ocean. It's a group of 118 islands. And as you can see from the pictures that I took, these are gorgeous islands that really inspire you to protect nature. When you go there, you feel like this is the type of nature, this is the type of beauty that we want to preserve when it comes to nature. This is the type of beauty that future generations should be able to experience. This is the type of beauty that we want everyone to see. While there may be beauty with industrialization, watching big skyscrapers, no beauty can be matched to nature's beauty. So I stayed in a hotel called the St. Regis Resort in Bora Bora of French Polynesia. Bora Bora is one of the famous islands there. And in this resort, they have created what is called a lagoonarium. And And what this does is that it takes the water from the ocean's lagoon and transports it to a smaller body of water within the resort. So you may be wondering, what is the reason for creating this lagoonarium? So the reason is that in French Polynesia, fish have been incredibly impacted by marine pollution. The engines of the boats, the oil from the engines of the boats, the noise pollution especially has been the worst problem. I got to interview a local marine biologist in Bora Bora, and he had informed me about how the noise pollution has been impacting the reproductive patterns of these marine fish. And with the impacts of reproductive patterns, fish cannot function properly, and that is their simple natural habitat. Who are we to disturb their natural habitat? And another concern has been invasive species. Recently, what has happened with global warming and rising sea levels is that sharks have been coming to this area that were previously not there. And the reason they're coming is because they're migrating due to changing weather patterns. And they're coming from Australia, they're coming from different areas of the world, and people are confused why their fish industry is changing, and many fishers are also confused as to what is going on. And so with this lagoonarium, you can see in the picture, you can see with this picture that it protects the environment. There's trees, there's lagoons, and there's fish everywhere. In this area, more than 120 species of fish are protected from the intoxicants of pollution, from the intoxicants of human impact. And no boats are allowed to travel in this area, no cars are allowed to travel within the resort. The only way we could transport from place to place was biking. So you can really see what a unique type of sustainable development this is. We are simultaneously protecting fish, we're simultaneously not using oil-powered engines, and we are also using renewable energy. And so the way that they use renewable energy here is that they use the power of the waves from the lagoon to pump salt water into the lagoon area. So you can see how unique that is. Without using coal, oil, and natural gas to power, they're using the power of the waves. And that's an example of non-renewable energy. So I received the question, how is this comparable to a zoo? Because in a zoo, we also store animals in a separate place, right? Here, we're also keeping animals in a separate place. But this is incomparable, in my opinion. And that is because these fish are still in their natural habitat. They're still in French Polynesia, they're still surrounded by nature, they're still in their lagoon, and they're unbothered by humans. Whereas in a zoo, maybe these animals have been transported across countries, maybe humans are taking too many pictures, and things like that. So this is a very much protected and unpolluted place for fish to grow. So why is this type of development necessary in today's day and age? First, the first reason that comes to mind is global warming, and how global warming has contributed to rising sea levels. So NASA, which is a US space company, has conducted a comparison of the Arctic sea ice cap. And as you can see on the picture on the right, September 1984 versus September 2016. So much ice has been lost. 1.86 million square kilometers of old ice existed in September of 1984 versus only 110,000 square kilometers of old ice had existed in September of 2016. And this is a major contributor to rising sea levels. Rising sea levels are particularly dangerous for islanders. Think about islands, small islands. There are homes on the coast. No one is on the top of a mountain. People are just living on the coast because they're closer to the land, they're closer to the water. That's how they have designed their homes. And with rising sea levels, there's so much climate anxiety in French Polynesia. Climate anxiety just simply means the fear that our world is going to end soon, or the fear that your home will be destroyed by the changes of the climate. And they're particularly worried that the rising sea levels are going to destroy their homes, are going to invade their homes, and they're going to be impacted by the rising sea levels. Another example is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Is anyone familiar with the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? No? Okay, well, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a compilation of trash. It has come from the west side of the Pacific Ocean, the east side of the Pacific Ocean, and is compiled in the north part of the Pacific Ocean. And this heap of trash is very, very big. It's indescribable to how big it is. And so this is a very uncovered topic in the media actually, and I didn't know about it until quite recently when I was doing some research into land pollution. So I'm glad that I get to share this with you. And this has been a compilation of marine debris. Marine debris meaning trash that we deposit into the ocean, trash that should not make its way to the ocean. And the statistics of this Great Pacific Garbage Patch are unimaginable. There are 1.8 trillion pieces of trash in this Great Pacific Garbage Patch. They estimate that this Great Pacific Garbage Patch weighs 80 to 90,000 tons, meaning 80 million kilos, which means 8 crores of kilos, which is a lot. We can't put that into word how much 8 crores of kilos of trash this is, right? And another interesting fact about this is that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is roughly 600,000 square miles, whereas Odisha is about 60 to 61,000 square miles. So this Great Pacific Garbage Patch spans over 10 times the size of Odisha. Today we are here in Odisha, and I mean, it's indescribable. I can't even describe how big Cuttack or Bhubaneswar is, where my family is from, and I don't know how to describe how big this is. And this is a bit graphic, so if you need to look away, please do. But this is an example of how plastics are impacting marine life. A few years ago, I believe in 2015, a sperm whale had arrived at the coast of Indonesia. And inside the sperm whale, they had noticed that more than 1,000 pieces of trash were inside the body of the sperm whale. Within that 1,000 pieces of trash, 13 pounds of plastic waste came out, and 150 plastic cups were inside the whale. And so this is why an effort like they have done in French Polynesia is necessary to protect marine species in today's world. I hope you can understand the necessity of this in today's world as we protect marine species to create a more sustainable world. So here's just an overall summary of what the lagoonarium has done. As I previously mentioned, you remove the pollution constraints. No boats travel here, no cars travel here. It's free from human impact. You prevent the extinction and endangerment of species who have recently been impacted by pollution, species whose reproduction patterns are changing. They're protected in this area. Also, we are utilizing renewable energy by using the power of the waves to pump salt water. Lastly, an external benefit of sustainable development is that it glamours up the resort. I cannot describe the beauty of the resort without the protection of the fish, without the protection of this land and area. Nature's beauty, as I described, is incomparable to anything in this world. Next, I would like to talk about terrestrial development. We have covered the aquatic development portion of sustainable development. Now I will cover terrestrial development. 2 weeks ago, I traveled to Bhuj, Gujarat, and there I did an independent research observation. I wasn't affiliated with any company. I just independently observed some of the mangrove plantations that the Adani Group has planted in Mundra, Gujarat. And so I have been working on publishing my research, and the main question that I'm trying to answer is, how does the Adani Group's Green Oasis project model sustainable development that can be used to combat the effects of climate change? So mangrove plantations in Mundra, Gujarat. So before we get into that, Mundra is a very dry, arid climate. It's basically a desert area attached to the sea. So that means very specific types of plants would have to be well suited to this area. Through thorough site analysis and through constant trial and error, Dr. Amol Jain, the Vice President of Horticulture at the Adani Group, has graciously extended his efforts at planting millions of trees in Mundra, Gujarat. And when I got to observe this area, they had informed me that there's 2,800 hectares of mangrove trees planted since 2005. 2,800 mangroves would roughly estimate to 5.6 to 7 million trees. That means 56 to 70 lakhs of trees, in other words. And so what does Green Oasis project mean? So Mundra, Gujarat, before this massive project, used to be dry, barren, saline lands. There was nothing in this area. But with this transformation, millions of trees have been planted. And with these millions of trees have come a lot of great effects. One of which is the great and rich biodiversity in this area. When I was there, I observed flamingos, I observed deers, and I observed a plethora of crabs. And I was shocked by the diversity, the enriching biodiversity of species in this area. This proves that if we make efforts like afforestation and conservation, afforestation meaning planting trees and conservation meaning conserving what is already there, we can really make a great impact on the animals around us. Not only, however, does this make a great benefit for animals, this project has provided thousands of jobs to local populations. This project has also allowed many of the local species to thrive as well. And here's some pictures that I have taken as well of the biodiversity observations. On the left are 2 deers. On the middle is flamingos. You can't really see from far, but if you go closer, you can see. And on the right, if you really look closely, there's a lot of crabs. And these crabs are very small and white, so it's hard to observe, but I mean, I went there and observed, and I was very ecstatic when I got to experience the biodiversity in this area. So how do efforts like this project combat India's environmental issues? Well, first, mangroves rapidly absorb carbon dioxide. And the thing about mangroves is that when they are planted, they also drop their seeds. So they plant and they spread everywhere. Mangroves rapidly absorb carbon dioxide because they actually make a chemical compound that stops the carbon dioxide from producing. And they're able to absorb carbon dioxide at maybe 4 to 5 times more than the average plant. Which is why in this area, and in this day and age where carbon emissions are rapidly increasing, and India is third in annual carbon emissions after China and the US, this would be a massive effort to control carbon emissions. Second, mangroves can control the effects of rising sea levels. As we mentioned before, rising sea levels are contributing to more tsunamis and more cyclones, and it's creating a volatile nature, meaning that we are unable to predict when a tsunami can happen, when a cyclone can happen. And there was a study done from the 2004 Indian Ocean by BBC News. And this was done in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, there are 2 areas. One area was completely surrounded by mangroves and vegetation, and the other area was absent of mangroves and vegetation. And in the first area, only 2 people died when they were protected by mangroves. And in the second area, being unprotected by mangroves, roughly 6,000 people died. So mangroves can prove to be the type of green infrastructure that we need today. What do I mean by green infrastructure? I mean infrastructure that can protect humans and can foster the health of humans in today's day and age. So with a seawall across our coastlines that not only promote biodiversity, that not only help local populations, we can also help protect the lives of everyone around us. Lastly, this project raises awareness. And raising awareness is one of the best things we can do today. This project has raised awareness not only to me, but to everyone in the Mundra Bhuj area who are slowly starting to understand the importance of trees, the importance of planting millions of trees in this area. Why is sustainable development necessary for India? So this has been recent news, and Yale's Environmental Protection Index, Yale University in the US, they do an annual study of the protective nature of each country. And unfortunately, India has come 180th out of 180 countries. And this is across 40 performance indicators and across 11 categories. So some of the categories may include controlling carbon emissions, deforestation, and land loss, water loss, things like that. And so this really means that we have to take action. And big projects like terrestrial development, like the Green Oasis project, can help us move in the right direction. But we need to move faster. We're moving in the right direction, and I'm very thrilled to see the awareness and increasing education about the environment and climate change, hence today's seminar in India. And I'm glad that we are stepping in the right direction, and I hope that we can continue to step in this direction. As per Yale University's summary of countries that have come dead last in these rankings, such as India, such as Pakistan, such as different countries, they say their low EPI scores, Their low EPI scores indicate the need for greater attention to the spectrum of sustainability requirements with a high priority focus on critical issues such as air and water quality, biodiversity, and climate change. So just to reiterate, this ranking should not discourage you. It should not discourage us Indians. It should encourage us to work harder at making this world and making India a more environmentally protected area. Pause. Who is first on the EPI? So let's pause here for a second. If I could get 5 people to maybe guess who has come first on this ranking, you can first guess here. If I could just get 5 people maybe to guess, who do you think might be first on this ranking? Sweden, Singapore, Denmark, or the US? Or just one volunteer is okay too. Singapore. Okay, so Singapore is one of the guesses. So you can press next. The correct answer is Denmark. And so the actual rank, Sweden has come number 5, Singapore has come number 44, Denmark has come number 1, US has come number 43. So if we know these rankings of these countries, I think what would really be a good idea is to observe what are these top 5 countries doing? What is Denmark doing? What is the UK doing? What is Sweden doing? What is Malta doing? And top 5 countries will come down. What is Finland doing? And if we can observe some of their infrastructure, some of the ways that they are using sustainable development in today's world, then I really do think we can bring change around. So I'd like to show a video in which it details what Denmark has done to earn this ranking. What has Denmark done to earn this number 1 ranking? And we are going to be watching a video from the capital city of Denmark, which is Copenhagen. I hope I'm not going too fast. Please at any point let me know if I need to slow down or if I need to re-explain some things. So now please take a look at this video.